The following video contains spoilers. We suggest watching the episodes alone in the dark. Hello, Wolfpack. It's me, your favorite talking cat reviewer. And today, we're going to go over a list that's been sitting on my shelf for a very long time now. For those of you who might be new here, my name is Catastrophe, and on this channel, we love to take a look at amazing horror stories for fun, and to see how well they hold up by today. One of our favorite TV shows ever is the underrated fantasy horror series, R.L. Stine's The Haunting Hour. We have gone through nearly every episode the show ever had, and we're currently down to only 6 remaining targets, still on my kill list. But if you've ever watched my reviews, you'd know that I have a tendency to be very harsh in my discussions, since poking fun at the show's goofier moments is just too easy. I'll admit that I can get a little mean in my critiques, even bashing episodes that I actually love with all my heart. Not even the great episodes avoid my wrath. However, I do love The Haunting Hour, and I only criticize it because I like the show so much. This is a great show, and it irks me whenever it does something too silly. What makes The Haunting Hour so great, you ask? Well, the very awesome dark horror monsters, naturally. Being a work of the great R.L. Stine, you can expect a ton of good horror villains scarring us for life. I've gone over the show's worst villains a while back, so if you want to know what kind of antagonists I hate, then feel free to see that special.
Those villains were great. This list will be the true characters who sucked. Don't watch it, kids.
Shut up, House. I've gone over lots of negatives in the show, but there is a lot to love about it nonetheless. So I hope you're interested, because these are some of my favorite villains from the phenomenal horror series. Before we begin, I just want to say that this villain list is my list. These are the villains that I consider great, so this video will be biased. Please don't freak out if your favorite characters didn't make it onto the list, because this video was honestly a lot harder to make than you'd think it would be, due to all the great monsters. Also, I'm disqualifying fake-out villains, so I'm ruling out characters like the Switchman and the Carney. Just because they're supernatural characters doesn't mean that they count on this list. Villains only, not heroes or fake-out antagonists. So, what kind of villains do I consider the best Haunting Hour monsters ever? Well, let's stop wasting time and find out. These are my top 10 best villains on The Haunting Hour. Number 10. Travis, from My Imaginary Friend. Yeah, pretty odd choice, right? Travis, in my opinion, is often one of the most overlooked villains in the entire series, due to the fact that he doesn't actually seem like as big an evil monster as he really is underneath the surface. Travis is introduced as an imaginary friend created by a shy antisocial loner named Sean, who has no real friends and is too scared to talk to actual people his own age. Naturally, only Sean can see and talk to Travis, but our innocent kid hero idolizes this greaser bad boy because Travis represents everything that Sean wants to be. A cool rebel who does whatever he wants, and is big with the ladies. However, we do see that Travis does love Sean just as much in return, but it gets to the point where the hallucination thinks that Sean is only his friend, and his alone. Later in the story, Sean gets his brother Dave to see his imaginary friend too, through the power of imagination. So now both the brothers can hang out with Travis and have fun together, right? Unfortunately, Dave discovers that Travis is not as grand a hero as his little brother makes him out to be, and we see throughout the course of the episode that the cool imaginary friend is nothing more than a vicious psychotic yandere, who is slowly corrupting Sean to be just as bad as he is. One thing I love about this villain is how he's not your typical I love killing people psychopath, but rather, he's a toxic false friend who represents this innocent kid's inner rage. He basically shows off the power of peer pressure. My imaginary friend utilizes the classic good angel, bad angel plot, with Dave acting as Sean's moral conscience, and the villain Travis acting as Sean's deeply repressed anger for being alone. The episode also doesn't make Travis one-dimensional. We see that he actually does care for Sean deep down, but in an unhealthy, obsessive way. Travis wants Sean's friendship, but he also can't accept it when Dave starts making him look like a bad friend to the kid, causing Travis to tighten his hold over the boy's mind in a desperate attempt to become the dominant pal. What do you think is scarier? A villain who just reeks of obvious stranger danger, or a villain who pretends to be your best friend, and in the end has a bad influence over your life? To me, I think a monster who poses as your friend is much scarier than anything else, because they're just a ticking time bomb about to go off at any minute. Travis is the voice in your head that tells you to do bad things. He represents the dark side of your human soul. Travis may be imaginary, but his deadly influence over Sean is very real, and really dangerous. His obsession with Sean leads him down a dark path, and nobody will stand in between his need to be with his creator.
Don't you ever come between me and my pal Sean again, you got it?
Number 9. The Mad Artist, from Brush with Madness. Now, although I was a bit bitter towards this episode in particular, one thing that was outstanding in it was the grim villain. Technically, Alan Miller is the real villain, but the Mad Artist kind of acts as the sociopath's avatar. In the episode, a comic book nerd named Corey and his annoying girlfriend Emma have a nasty encounter with a paranoid graphic novelist named Alan Miller. But unbeknownst to Miller, the duo in retaliation steal his paintbrushes, which are of course magical, because they make everything Corey draws come to life in the real world. Corey uses the magic paintbrushes to create a psychotic supervillain, dubbed the Mad Artist, who he partially based off of Alan Miller. And as you can guess, the Mad Artist enters the real world, so he can stalk and kill his creator. While the Mad Artist is shrouded in mystery for the most part, he is by far one of the creepiest villains in the series, because of how oddly realistic he is. Think about it. This bad guy dresses in all black, drives around following unsuspecting little girls, sends death threats to his targets, conceals hidden weapons, and is 100% out to capture and kill these naive kids. This is the closest thing the show has to a real-life serial killer. The Mad Artist is an actual psychotic murderer who wants to brutally torture these kids to death, and if you know the ending, this doesn't close out on a happy note. I really like him because he's a very rare threatening human antagonist. Seriously, the only supernatural element about him is that he was a drawing who came to life. Or is he? If having a real-life serial killer as the villain of the week wasn't horrifying enough, Brush with Madness also features a very large mind screw of a plot that blurs the lines between fiction and reality. There are quite a few hints that make us question if the Mad Artist is really a drawing, or a real guy, which only adds even more nightmare fuel to him. I know I made a few easy jokes about the guy looking like Mr. Enter, but in all honesty, his physical appearance does make him look like a very creepy supervillain, and one of the most iconic Haunting Hour antagonists. I like him for how real he can be, and how his actions are creepily done. The mad artist wants to find humans who will be the perfect canvases for him to draw on, with their own blood. He's a criminally underrated villain that deserves much more attention because his artwork is a very nightmarish display. What more can I say? The mad artist stands as a perfect symbol on how art can mimic real life. Number 8. Scary Mary, from the episode of the same name. Although obviously based off of the folk legend Bloody Mary, Scary Mary is given her own unique origin and characteristics as well. According to a group of stupid kids, Scary Mary was once a self-absorbed pretty girl who was so in love with herself that she couldn't even stop admiring her own reflection in the mirror. Evidently, Mary was so obsessed with her own beauty that she didn't even realize that she was burning to death when her farmhouse caught on fire. Mary died a brutal, flaming death, with her beauty scorching away. However, the ghost of Mary still haunts this world, seeking vengeance for her lost beauty. In the time of the episode, a shy girl named Hannah does a special ritual to summon Mary's ghost through the mirror, so she could see if the legend is true. Mary soon begins talking with Hannah frequently, slowly gaining her trust over time until she's ready to pounce and drag her off to hell, where Mary remains trapped in. One thing that makes Mary kind of creepy is, like how Travis operates, she plays the sympathy card to lure in her victims, often acting like a false friend to fool innocent girls and gain their loyalty. However, her innocence is all just an act, so she can capture as many girls as she can in hell, where she proceeds to cut off their faces and wear them herself, while the captured girls get brainwashed into becoming her obedient slaves, doing all of Mary's bidding. Now that is truly scary. Mary doesn't simply kill off unsuspecting little girls, she lures them into her web, where she mutilates them for her own sadistic gain, and then she breaks them in to be her deformed slaves, doing everything she demands. We see how horrifying the slaves are, because none of them have their faces anymore, and are pretty warped mentally after spending so much time in hell with Mary. This girl might be the most monstrous villain in the entire series. It's especially unsettling when you remember that Mary did used to be a human being at one point, back when she was alive. And even after her death, she's still deluded into believing that she's a beautiful girl who can do whatever she wants to keep her fantasy alive. This girl tortures innocent little girls for fun and wears their ripped-off faces like a serial killer would. That is messed up. This episode was so dark. How come it only got an 8 out of 10? Oh yeah, that stupid pop song. Mary is cool, the pop song was not, because it killed the mood she set every time. Mary collects pretty faces off of little girls because she believes that the only way she can escape hell is by having a lovely gentleman arrive to the Netherrealm to whisk her away to a perfect happy ending, since only the power of love can break the hell barrier. Yeah, I know it sounds stupid, but it doesn't diminish this woman's twisted villain power. Of course, Hannah is captured by Mary and slowly tortured until the villain is ready to remove her face and brainwash her as another slave. But Eric, Hannah's love interest, comes in to rescue her. Mary steals our protagonist's face, but fails to trick Eric because her own selfish personality exposes her as a fraud. Eric confesses his love for the real Hannah despite her body horror, so in blind rage, Mary chooses to burn to death again in hell rather than let a true happy couple go free, because she believes that only she is worthy of true love. The couple narrowly escapes, but even after losing, Scary Mary continues to stalk Eric for the rest of his life until he becomes her boyfriend. Utterly ruthless, manipulative, and narcissistic, Scary Mary is a complete monster who will haunt your nightmares.
Take her. She's ugly. She has no face.
Number 7. The Devil. Yeah, you can't write a villains list without putting Satan himself on it. Take your pick, the Devil from Headshot or the one from Long Live Rock and Roll. They're both the same character. The show has had the Devil act as a surprise villain in 2 episodes. The one in Headshot goes by the form of fashion CEO Cassandra Hobbs, and the version on the musical tale goes by the title of Sir Maestro, a washed-out rock star who is all too friendly at helping kids become famous like he was. Although both the actors give a fantastic spin on the demon, Satan has the exact same goal in both plots. The devil wants to trick some unsuspecting innocent souls into selling their spirit to him, and in exchange, the demon will make them famous beyond their wildest dreams. A big part of the Haunting Hour's more subtle plot lines is that they tend to offer a supernatural character who is much more than what they seem on the surface before their true intentions are revealed. Exactly like Travis and Scary Mary, the devil acts like a lovable friend who just wants to help the loser kids get on their feet. But as usual, the devil's promises always come with tons of strings attached. In both episodes, the devil acts as a symbol of temptation, because the kids feel like they can't refuse his offers due to the ticket to easy fame, but it's all just a means to an end for our villain to claim their life. One thing I like about how the Haunting Hour portrays Satan is that they don't make him/her an overtly smug, diabolical monster, but rather the devil seems like the most civilized villain ever, making the reveal all the more impactful. With characters like the Mad Artist, or Big Yellow, or the Dreamcatcher, you can tell they're evil freaks from a mile away, but the devil usually acts like the person you'd least suspect. This is what makes Satan so scary. He, or she, poses as a friendly influence who is on your side until the demon is ready for the backstab. What's even better is that the show doesn't show us what Satan's true form is. It's mostly implied that the devil really is the traditional nightmare-inducing demon we all know deep down, but the final form is hidden underneath a human shell concealing the evil from our eyes. The devil is ugly, but uses alluring forms to trick naive souls into handing over whatever Satan wants. Though the less that's said about Sir Maestro's outfit, the better. At least his guitar skills give him some street cred. Nevertheless, the show really knew how to write a brilliant devil without ruining the dark nature of the embodiment of evil itself. While not a typical in-your-face jump-scare monster, the devil is a calm, competent, patient being whose powers of persuasion really unlock a dark, hideous evil.
What are you? Haven't you already guessed?
Number 6. The Scarecrow and the Stranger from, well, Scarecrow. Alright, this villain team-up must really be epic if they outranked the devil, right? You bet they are. Once upon a time, a pair of farm siblings named Jenny and Bobby struggled to keep their cornfield from prospering, mainly because they sucked at keeping the crows away. One day, they went into town to purchase some useful farming supplies until they met an obviously creepy stranger who nonchalantly talks about death and how meaningless life is. Fun subjects, until he randomly leaves for no reason. But then he comes back a few seconds later to talk with Jenny alone in the streets, where he sells her a scarecrow. Naturally, the Scarecrow is alive and totally evil. The living dummy at first seems way too good to be true, since it does manage to purge the farm of the crows. But when the Scarecrow starts popping up from out of nowhere on its own, the siblings begin to think that their new farmhand is not as great as it appears to be. Now, R.L. Stine is no stranger to the evil living Scarecrow plotline, but here the show takes a rather different approach to it. The Scarecrow is naturally creepy and scary, but they don't go for that easy jump scare serial killer vibe. Instead, they go for a more subtle story. As the episode goes on, not only do those pesky crows vanish, but then all their farm animals disappear too. And then the loud noises of the world, and eventually the people. If you don't want me to spoil the ending to the critically acclaimed Scarecrow tale, then please skip to this time. I'll give you a second or so to do it.
The Scarecrow man sucks. Bring in Griselda.
Shut up, House. Okay, here we go. It's soon revealed that the Scarecrow and the Stranger are in fact the exact same person. The Scarecrow acts as a powerful true form, using its unseen fantastical powers to make all life disappear. The Stranger is actually a supernatural being who is here to obliterate all life on Earth, because he's really the Antichrist. At least that's what I think he is. Although it's never outright stated what this guy is, he is an omnipotent entity who is here to bring the end of the world, and he accomplishes this by slowly wiping out all living beings with a quiet hand wave, as we observe the calm, calculated holocaust he brings. To make it all the more disturbing, the Scarecrow Man wins without even hitting a single roadblock in the way of his evil plan at all.
Flawless victory.
No joke, the episode concludes with the end of the world. There are two alternate endings to this story, but no matter what, the Scarecrow Man succeeds in his ultimate end goal. The villain wins, and we close out on a depressing wrap-up. This villain is not only a good, unsettling, competent antagonist, but the way the episode plays out also attempts to make him a tragic embodiment of hopelessness. It's a bit strange how this guy wants to bring the end of the world, but even then, he doesn't even seem to take any sadistic pride in this. In fact, the Scarecrow Man is kind of sad that it had to come to this. The villain doesn't want to do this, but he has to, because it's his fate. I do strongly theorize that this might be the Antichrist, because the episode plays up some subtle Jesus symbolism, and the actor playing the Stranger comes across as a fallen wise man, rather than a bitter monster. The Scarecrow was one of the show's greatest episodes ever, and of course, it has a great villain to boot. Not only is this villain successful in the end, but he is a scary omen on the futility of life itself.
We're the hollow men. We're the stuffed men. Leaning together. Headpiece filled with straw.
Number 5. The Dream Catcher, from the episode of the same name. This villain is by far one of the most physically imposing badasses in the entire series. In the episode, we meet a trio of girls named Lisa, Amelia, and Meg who are attending an all-girls summer camp. But Meg gets jealous of her ex-best friend abandoning her, and she goes out of her way to ruin their fun. But she's not the only one, because it's revealed that a monstrous dream demon haunts the campground, and is actively hunting down children to murder and feast upon. The camp has a special native ritual where all the girls must make their own dream catchers to prevent them from having nightmares. But these native artifacts are also the only things that prevent the dream demon from entering their minds and offing them in their sleep. But that jerk Meg sabotages Lisa and Amelia's dream catchers, causing them to have some dangerously close encounters with the dream catcher beast. Although not much of a strategic villain, the Dreamcatcher is a feral beast whose only instinct is to kill children for food. Just looking at this guy is enough to fill your nightmares, because the Dreamcatcher is very unsettling to look at. Seriously, he makes Freddy Krueger look like Fluttershy. Unlike most of the other villains on this list, the Dreamcatcher is not too complex, and he has a very simple, straightforward goal. He wants to eat people and slays them in their dreams. The show really knows how to make this monster as terrifying as possible, because when the girls venture into his lair, we see a very bizarre spiderweb labyrinth with tons of clothes and body parts strung along on the webs, just to make sure that the audience knows that this guy has killed people before. Our main characters are not the first people who encountered him. Instead, they're all just his recent victims in a long line of food scraps. I gotta say that I'm really impressed that the show got away with showing this guy to kids. Seriously, the Dreamcatcher is just an inch away from being an R-rated horror monster. Even worse is that he also has some rapist vibes tossed in too for good measure. The show tries to add a mind screw to the plot by making us question if the Dreamcatcher is real or if parts of this episode are only in a dream. But it's not done that well because it's blatantly obvious that the Dreamcatcher is only in the dream world. At the core, this monster is just a vicious predator preying upon children for a food source. It's simple for the audience, but very, very effective. Nevertheless, the Dreamcatcher is a physically terrifying hunter who will crawl into your nightmares, making him one of the show's darkest monsters. Number 4. Lily D. From Really You and the Return of Lily D. Some people may argue that this girl is not as scary as the Dreamcatcher or the Devil, since she's just a simple killer doll, but I disagree. Lily D was created as a gift from the Really You toy company for a spoiled brat named Lily Carbo, who always wanted a life-size doll of herself. Of course, she gets more than what she bargained for, once Lily D reveals that not only is she alive, but she wants to steal human Lily's life, believing that this girl doesn't deserve it. While not as huge as the Dreamcatcher, I honestly found this doll much creepier because of that unnerving, soulless stare in her eyes, and the fact that Lily D doesn't see anything wrong with her actions, while most of the villains on this list so far know that what they're doing is wrong, but do it anyway. Lily D is deluded into thinking that she's more alive than the humans around her, and that she has earned the right to be an actual person, but in the end, she's nothing more than a sick, twisted psychopath who is actually feeding off of the love of others to give herself power. The show really knows how to take its time building up Lily D. We know for a fact that the doll is alive the minute we meet her, but the writers do the Jaws effect, where they take their slow time before showing the doll moving and walking around doing something evil. Lily D frames human Lily for doing bad things around the house to turn her family against her, where we see that the killer doll is tricking the mother into loving her more than her actual human daughter, empowering the doll's desire for a human body. Once she gains enough power from love, Lily D then switches lives with human Lily by transforming the poor girl into a doll, while the villain gains a human form. The villain nearly succeeds, but human Lily's brother is unfortunately the only person with a brain in the story arc, and he derails her evil plans, and the killer doll exits via a truck crashing into her. However, we see that Lily D survived her accident, and she soon gets adopted by a new girl named Natalie, and is taken in like a little sister. Sadly, Lily D proves to still be an evil backstabber, and she immediately goes back to trying to kill people. Some fans have pointed out to me that the return of Lily D is not as good as the original because they felt that Lily D's character didn't change at all. And you know what? I think that was the point. Lily D doesn't change in her sequel. She has the perfect opportunity to start over and be a good person, now that she's with a girl who actually loves her. But she refuses to change who she is, because deep down, Lily D will always be the same self-absorbed monster who needs to have things go her way. That's the point of the sequel. Not only is it a great follow-up to the best story arc of The Haunting Hour, but it shows us how Lily D truly is an irredeemable monster even at her lowest point. Lily D just wanted to be loved, but she can't stand not being in the spotlight 24/7. She did have a chance to change, and in the end she still throws it all away because she's too much of a low-life monster to let go of her jealous rage. Lily D is the worst kind of evil. She's blind to her own villainy because she truly believes that she deserves things to be her way all the time, and she just can't let go of her delusions of grandeur. She's scary, sadistic, cold, calculating, and an all-around well-defined villain. Lily D just sends a grim shiver down your spine.
I don't see it. I don't see the doll. It's gone.
Number 3. Fear. From Fear Never Knocks. Now we're getting to the good stuff. In this guy's tale, a duo of children named Jack and Jenny are left home alone in their grandpa's mansion as he attends a retirement party celebrating his years as a successful therapist who helped many patients conquer their darkest fears. The children soon discover a special tape recorder that has the power to summon and absorb nightmares, but unfortunately for them, our creepy villain stalks them and breaks into their home in an effort to steal the device for his evil villain plans. Fear is pretty much an homage to the horror icon Freddy Krueger, but in truth, he is also the Haunting Hour's version of the Boogeyman. Fear is just an unapologetic, over-the-top, mustache-twirling villain who goes all out with his evil performance. I just love the way the actor throws himself into the role because he is so good at it. The way this guy acts is really entertaining to watch, so much that I'd put him right up there alongside Tom Kenny and Christopher Lloyd in terms of great actors on this show. When you rewatch this episode, it seems like Fear doesn't actually do much physically, but the actor's performance is enough to show off the villain's amazing powers. It's a case where the actor's performance shows us all we need to know about this diabolical mastermind, rather than telling us all about him through exposition. This guy looks evil, acts evil, talks evil, and even laughs in the most evil way possible.
So, where is Dr. Hansen?
My grandfather? He's downstairs. And he's got a shotgun.
Yes, this actor actually gives this guy the most hammy villain laugh possible. That's how dedicated he is. Fear has the power to bring people's greatest phobias to life in the real world, and he has some reality warper potential to bend unsuspecting victims into a scared corner, where he then sadistically feeds on their nightmares to enhance his strength. Fear's ultimate end goal is to steal the special tape recorder, dubbed the Box of Fears, from the protagonist's grandfather, because he needs it to enhance his own powers of bringing the world's greatest nightmares to life, where he then plans to, you guessed it, take over the world.
Of course!
Yes, I'm not kidding around. This guy is the first Haunting Hour villain who wants to take over the world. We have a Haunting Hour monster who is planning world domination. How is this guy so overlooked by the fan base? Fear is an incredibly intimidating villain with unlimited power and high ambitions. Toss in a charismatic performance and obvious stranger danger fashion, and you get the most fun villain of all time. This is why I love this antagonist. Not only is he super scary, but he's also fun. I love a villain who is enjoyable to watch, while also managing to maintain the dignity of an impressive enemy that you can be afraid of. Plus, he beats up that stupid kid from Poop de Fromage, so that earned him some bonus points. Fear Never Knocks is a great episode of the series, and it's made all the more better thanks to a fun, unsettling, charismatic monster. The only thing that can stand in his way is the Box of Fears, because it can be used to destroy him as well as empower him. Or can it? Disturbing, over-the-top, mischievous, powerful, and fun, Fear, quite frankly, earns his title as Fear itself.
Why? Because I'm afraid.
You stick to my ear. Tell me exactly what you are afraid of, my dear.
Number 2. The House from My Old House.
Oh yeah, now we're talking.
Shut up, House. The actual villain House is a sentient building who is best friends with this antisocial little girl named Alice. Sadly, Alice and her family are moving away because they can no longer afford the living home, meaning that his friendship with Alice might be coming to an end. However, Alice refuses to let go of her best friend and attempts to continue their warped relationship forever. And the unsettling structure feels the exact same way. What makes this villain super creepy is the very dark relationship he shares with the main character. I kid you not, the show really hammers it in how the House and Alice's close relationship feels like an actual romantic couple.
I'm never gonna leave you.
It's spelled out that their relationship is clearly unhealthy because the House and Alice don't actually love each other as much as they might think they do. My Old House is my favorite episode of all time because it creeps me out even to this day. The way the House changes facial expressions is scary, and the episode tries to fool us into questioning whether or not the House is real or just a figment of Alice's imagination. Spoiler alert, the building is real, because of course it is. I think the only episodes that did succeed at misleading mind screws were Brush with Madness, Sick, and The Cast, but that's a story for another day. I rambled on and on about how much it sucks that we don't exactly get a clear origin for the House, but that's mostly because I wanted to know more about this bad guy, because I love and fear him so much. Unlike most villains, the House actually didn't start out as a bad guy, but instead the episode is about his slow transition into becoming a villain. The house actually was Alice's close best friend at one point, but his obsessive need to keep her by his side at all times turned him into the monster he is by the end of the story. The episode offers both Alice and the villainous house some decent character development. Alice is changing from a brat into a more enlightened person, while the house is becoming more and more of a grim villain. I feel like the house could have been as good as Alice thought he was, but his obsession with his lover warped him into an Anakin Skywalker-esque monster.
You turned her against me! You have done that yourself! You will not take it from me!
I really think that the house is scary, because the episode is outright telling kids that they're not even safe in their own homes, because your own house could be a psychotic yandere who will stalk you and murder you if you don't stay on its good side. The house really feels like a child molester too, and the show plays it up for all it's worth. I mean, come on, Alice is like 13, and the house was built years ago. Gross. However, the story also treats the house's relationship with Alice like a tale of domestic abuse, thanks to how creepy the building can get when it tries to keep its girlfriend under its control. The episode My Robot tried to do a similar domestic abuse storyline, but they kinda failed hard at it. Here, the house actually keeps the dark themes flowing swimmingly. I think that The House is a seriously complex nightmare-fueling terror that shows off how creative The Haunting Hour can be. I stand by this story being more of a tale on how the house evolves from a loving boyfriend to a psychotic serial killer, because it adds more character to this lunatic. And of course, there's his final form. I think the CGI is alright, and the symbolism that the house is a blood-red snake underneath its light demeanor just adds even more layers to this creepy number. The house is an unsettling monster, because when it wants something, like Alice, then it will never let it go. Ever again. Before we reach our number one winner, here are a few honorable mentions that I liked, but didn't quite make it in. Uncle Howie. I know a lot of people are going to be pissed that this guy didn't make the final cut, but that's because I honestly can't say that Uncle Howie is a true villain. His whole motivation is to avenge an innocent girl by getting back at her big bully of a brother, Jared. I'm sorry, but that's not enough for me to label him as a truly evil villain. Maybe the hero list, Uncle Howie. The creamy cold ice cream truck from Catching Cold. I loved this creepy vehicle, but sadly, it didn't make it onto the list because of its simple goals of collecting children. Seamus the Leprechaun from Lots of Luck. This guy is a really underrated villain because he just might be the smartest antagonist the show has ever had. The only bad part is that he's not exactly physically intimidating. Jake Skinner from the Dead Body arc. A really cool, complex bad boy from one of the show's best tales of suspense. He sadly didn't make it onto the video because he got upstaged by the Grim Reaper. If you saw that arc, then you know what I mean. Dr. Sturgis from Lights Out, a criminally underrated psychologist who is really a supernatural terror to be wary of. He didn't make it onto the list because he's kind of saved as a surprise villain introduced halfway into the plot. Swarmin' Norman and Manny the Mantis. These two are two of the most complex tragic villains the show has ever had, and they both made a very creepy episode super cool. Sadly, I didn't include them officially on the list because I still have some very serious issues with how their hero-villain shifts were handled. The Pumpkinheads from the Pumpkinheads arc. These abominations are body horror at the highest degree. They are really scary, but sadly they didn't make it onto the list because their sequel sucked. And finally, we reach our number one. Big Yellow from Mascot. Aw yeah, finally a villain who has it all. Big Yellow is cool, creepy, strategic, epic, and even hilarious at the same time. Big Yellow is the school mascot of Yellow Valley High School, but our main characters Willie and Drake think that he's not good enough to raise the school spirit as he should be, so they set off to replace him with a cooler new school mascot. However, this job means everything to Big Yellow, and he refuses to allow some punk kids to take away his spotlight. Why, he'll even commit numerous crimes to get his way. The episode tries to fool the viewer into believing that Big Yellow is just some guy in a terrible costume, but it becomes painfully obvious that he is actually a real monster. I honestly don't think that it's a major spoiler at this point, because anyone who knows the episode Mascot will know why Big Yellow deserves a spot on the Best Villains videos. But let's go into his character. While undeniably a massive egotistical attention whore, Big Yellow is actually kinda funny, based on his dopey-looking fat costume and his incredibly hilarious dance moves. I don't think anyone would disagree with me on Big Yellow's dancing skills, because they are so hilarious. But his wacky dancing skills do a great job at humanizing him and adding some depth to the guy. However, we do see that Big Yellow is not a force to be reckoned with, because he is just as dangerous as his appearance implies. Big Yellow is a beast like the Dreamcatcher. He has simple goals, but he also takes sadistic amusement in his villainous actions as well. Big Yellow actually kills people in this episode. Yes, this thing kills people. There are a lot of subtle hints dropped in that suggest Big Yellow actually having a higher kill count than the Dreamcatcher. Yes, this goofy-looking monster has actually killed multiple people, and just like the Spider-Man, he's held on to some trophies from his past kills like a serial killer would. You know, for kids. Eventually, Willie does some amateur detective work to learn more about the savage Big Yellow, but he gets more than what he bargained for once the monster catches on to him, and the two duke it out, where Big Yellow reveals that he's a real monster. Oh yeah, and he can survive getting his head torn off. This monster can survive getting his head ripped off without feeling a single instance of pain. This guy is unstoppable. And to add even more nightmare fuel around him, Big Yellow kills people by eating them. This is how the monster gets away with all his murder sprees. He swallows them whole and lets them die a painful death being digested by his stomach acid. This guy is so sick and twisted. What's even funnier is that Big Yellow is also a pretty intelligent monster, and not just a big stupid brute like you'd think he is. No lie, no joke, Big Yellow is actually so smart that he rigged a poison death gas chamber inside his own secret bedroom like a supervillain would, on the off chance that some curious looky-loo would try to break into his home to discover his true identity. Yeah, Big Yellow just lives under some stupid high school, and he's so ready to stop anyone from discovering his true monster heritage that he's planned elaborate death traps to silence any of his enemies. Good lord, this monster is as crazy prepared as Batman. Big Yellow has one of the most scariest episodes ever, and for good reason, because this villain just dominates every scene that he's in. Sure, he looks like a rejected Sesame Street Muppet, but it only adds more to his unsettling, goofy look. This hulking genius bruiser doesn't even have a single line of dialogue, and yet he still expresses so much to establish his cool presence. Big Yellow is by far one of the best antagonists ever featured on The Haunting Hour. And those were my top 10 favorite Haunting Hour villains. Did you like them all? Did I miss any awesome villains? What are your top 10 favorite Haunting Hour monsters? Please, feel free to reply in the comments section below. That's pretty much all I got, until I start binging on The Nightmare Room, Goosebumps, The Twilight Zone, and Are You Afraid of the Dark? The Haunting Hour rocks, and if you want more on these villains, then feel free to check out my legitimate episode reviews. Otherwise, I'll see you all later. Remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe, or just tune in for more videos posted here on Wolf Entertainment. I'm your host, Catastrophe, and I can't wait to finish off The Haunting Hour.
Boo, this list sucked. Only the house was good.